Hello, I am your everyday average Jonathan. Join me this week while I take this and make it into this, what we're going to call a Gothic goblet. Hello, I am your everyday average Jonathan. I'm an ordinary guy with ordinary tools making extraordinary items. This week I'm going to be taking on something that is a bit of a departure for me. It's going to be the chalice or the goblet that you would see around the Knights of the Round Table's table. And I'll be putting to use a method that I've actually only used maybe once or twice, but never for anything like this. And that's going to be taking a flat piece of metal and making it into an elongated bowl or cup. I don't have the forms that one might use to make that, so I'm going to be sort of making this up as I go. I think I'm being stalked by some turkeys and roosters. But it should be entertaining. It should be a bit of a challenge. So come join me. Let's get to the shop and get started. Normally I do some mock-ups, I do some sketches of what it is that I'm going to build. I'll do quite a few, but in this particular instance, I was going to freeform this from the very, very beginning. I didn't know how big the chalice, the goblet section of this was going to be. And I pulled these old calipers off my wall that I don't think I've ever actually used to sort of make the circle the centerpiece of the goblet. It really didn't work. I don't have a protractor that's big enough to do this, but it is 14 gauge steel and obviously a very old sheet of metal. Got it nice and round, cleaned it up as best I could, and then over to the old swage block to start dishing this. And thus begins some of the most frustrating, laborious, error-prone aspects of the work that I think I may have ever done, which is interesting because I have made quite a bit of armor where I dish the metal quite a bit, but making a chalice, a really, really elongated egg, if you will, was not in the cards for this particular piece of metal. I used all sorts of tools, all matter of bludgeons, all matter of tweaks, and really in the end it just seemed like it didn't work at all. I ended up having to remove a lot of material from the lip of this that you're going to see here, making these little triangular sections that I was just going to cut out and then pull it back together. I know there is a much easier way to do this, and I wonder what the method is without using two forms, a male and a female end, and a press of some sort. I really don't know, and I hate the thought, and I'll end up hating the final product here, that I'm going to have to weld so much. Even my welding and my lines for the welding, I did not get right. I did use some of these other forms. This is an old bearing chase from, I think, a tractor or a truck that I was able to sandwich this down into. I planished this, which has smoothed out the metal surface quite a bit, but it still needed a lot of love. And after welding this, as you're going to see here, it just was a monstrosity. There was so much leftover space in it that it looked terrible to me. Here it is after I welded it together. It was not holding water whatsoever. Polished it up, got rid of those welds, still not holding water, and then I'm going to go about planishing this. I sprayed basically Flex Seal and then some truck bed liner into that to go ahead and get it sealed, and I just did it way too soon. I didn't put a touch mark in there. I should have waited to the very end. Now I'm going to be making the handle. This is a new twist pattern for me. I actually don't know what the name of this twist pattern, but I literally saw it this same week, and you're just going to cut these indentations, or I shouldn't say indentations, you're going to cut these grooves along the spine, and you're going to do this twice. So you're going to make basically one section of that square a spine, and then the non-cut sections you're going to flatten with the hammer as you see me doing here. It has a really nice stylized look. At least the one that I saw on the video that I saw online has a really cool stylized look. And indeed, upon doing this, the look is pretty cool. I'll definitely be using this again. So much of what I am doing with this particular chalice is going to end up being twisted metal. So here's how the handle portion looks. I think it's really cool. Now we're going to get set with what is going to be called, or what is called, a dragon twist, dragon tooth or dragon tail or shark's tooth twist. I've never done this before, and making this even more interesting was the fact that this particular piece of metal had a long tapered section. That is difficult. But I set about with the angle grinder, cutting out these little grooves. I don't know how many of them were. There's probably 60 or 70 of these grooves. Really very interesting, and I don't think I got it right, but in the end I do think that it turned out pretty close to what I wanted it to look like. I did screw this up once though. There was one area of this, you're supposed to cut long longitudinal grooves down the middle of this particular thing, and I did not get that done. But before twisting, here's what it looks like. Now the interesting part. With this, you are supposed to twist small sections at a time. You don't start at the top. You start with small sections, little quarter turns, this, that, and the other. I had to do this quite a bit, and in one point, actually, off camera, I fractured this thing. I broke it, and I had to go weld it back together. But you don't do the whole section because it won't twist in the way that you want it to twist. What you're looking for is each of those barbs, those teeth that you see, you want them to offset the ones above them slightly. It does look like kind of a dragon's tail. I like the way it looked. Again, I had to weld it several times, but this is how it's going to cup the chalice portion, how it's going to nestle in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make the feet. The feet of this is just going to be 4 twisted, ornate, semi-ornate feet. The twist is just going to be a very normal twist pattern for me, which you see there. And then I am going to put a bottom-facing spike, just because you always need spikes. This is the base portion of where it's going to rest, and now we're just going to go ahead and get these two things set up and welded together so that the whole chalice starts to come together. This went pretty smoothly, I have to say. I was kind of worried, but it went quite smoothly. I was debating allowing the cup to sit directly on the pedestal handle, but in the end I actually lifted it up a little bit and gave it a little bit of clearance, as you're probably going to be able to see here. So it looks like it's kind of floating off of the handle. I like that look. Here's the final product. Here's what it looks like. I like how it turned out. I think that the overall effect is good. I'm leaving the real hammered marks in there. I want the blows of each hammer to be seen. And here's me taking a fake drink from it. Thank you for joining me for this build. This was a very interesting, difficult, challenging build. I tried no less than 3 things that were brand new to me that I've never tried before. All right, straight in, because the list of takeaways on this goblet is fairly long, so let's just get straight into it. Firstly, the goblet itself, the chalice, the cup that itself. This probably took me between 5 and 6 hours to make, and I screwed it up from the very beginning all the way through the entire process. The first thing is, I really think, and I don't know this, but I think that the ancients, before there was welding, before there were modern forges, that the ancients would have had a form to press down onto, a male and a female form to make these with. Even if they just heated it up and pressed it into that form to get it close, that would have been much better than what I did. As you saw, I screwed this up the entire way. I had to make all these cuts out of it to reduce the size, then I had to weld copious amounts of time. Literally, because I thinned this out so much as I was trying to shape it and pull it down, I was thinning the metal and thinning the metal. It fractured and broke and had fissures in it, so much so that when I welded it, I just had to keep chasing welds, keep chasing fissures. A full fourth or maybe a fifth of this material in this chalice is probably weld. I'm very intrigued by how they made these in the ancient times and how they would have done this differently than how I did it. If I were to do it over again, I would just make 4 hemispheres. I would essentially just make a football, something that looks like this out of 4 hemispheres, weld those 4 hemispheres, cut it in half, and then I have 2 chalices that I can refine. Also on this is not very smooth, polished, or planished. There's a lot of hammer blows, there's a lot of marks to this. I'm gonna leave all of those in here. I actually want people to look at this and think, wow, that looks like that took a lot of hammer blows and it looks like it kind of sucks. Other thing that I screwed up, I put the flex seal or that truck bed sealer into this way too soon. That should have been the last thing that I did. I want to put a touch mark in this, but I'm afraid that if I heat this back up, it's just going to melt things. I'm going to blast it with the touch mark and it's going to shatter the piece. So I'm just not even going to do a touch mark. What I am going to do, and I should have done this on camera, is I'm going to take some food safe epoxy heat this up a little bit, pour the epoxy in, and then just kind of rotate it. Take it back outside so it cools slowly, and then just sort of rotate it so that the epoxy can kind of spool around, if you will. All right, the dragon scale twist that I had, is the first time I've ever tried it. I watched several videos on how to make these, and every video that I saw, the piece of metal that they were making the twist on was uniform all the way up the length of the metal. This was tapered. I did see several videos, several people making this say, be very, very careful when you twist this, that you don't snap the metal underneath, because you're going to be twisting things, some of which will be cooler, some of which will be warmer, because it's not heated the entire length of the piece. You're twisting sections as you go, heating sections and twisting sections as you go, as you saw me do. What you didn't see, because I didn't film this, but I'm admitting it to you now, is I broke this 3 different places, and I had to weld it back together 3 different places. I was so frustrated, I was swearing, I was yelling at things. It really sucked. Yeah, I'm not happy with that. All right, other piece I've never done before. I saw this twist pattern last week. It's been a week since I saw it. I think it looks really, really cool. Dove into it, liked the way it turned out. That's fine. The feet on this, the pedestal feet, those are regular twists that I've done many times. Those look fine too. And of course, I put a spike on the bottom, because you always have to have a spike, don't you? Overall, I'm giving this the grade of a C+. I like the way it looks, but I know how much Band-Aid work went into this. If you were to look behind the scenes, if this were to be a car and you were to look behind the scenes, you'd see all matter of issues, things that are going to need to be fixed. I will seal this and end up taking at least 1 drink out of it at some point, just because that's what it's for. But I'm going to hang this in my house on my pot rack, just because it's a conversation piece. I want to see what it looks like there, or I'll just put it somewhere stuck back behind a whole bunch of other cups on a shelf somewhere. Anyways, if you like projects like this, where you see a guy that is self-taught struggle his way through trying to recreate historical things or make fantastical things, please look at my YouTube channel for other projects that I've made that are like this. Join me next week. I keep promising or threatening that I'm going to get to some Christmas gifts, and one of them is going to be a eccentric picture frame. So I'm going to tackle that. That should be coming out here fairly shortly. I may not release it before Christmas, because I don't want the recipient to see it before I release it, but that's what we'll be building next week. Until then, thank you for joining me. God bless.